So what's your name?
Abity.
But you go by YouTube. What's your YouTube?
Liberty Free TV.
And what does that mean, Liberty Free?
I don't know. That was just like the name that, because I was like, because when I first got into the rabbit hole, right, I got a little, I was pretty much freaking with it, right? So I just call it Liberty Free.
Do you consider yourself a cop watcher or auditor?
I would say more of a, I don't know, just myself. I just protest, whenever I see that a protest is needed, and I record when I see that it's, that a video camera is needed. I think that videotaping in today's day and age is very, very important. Because what real life is and what the narrative says is different. So you want to have reality. There's nothing that proves reality like a video, I believe.
It's really interesting. You said narrative. What do you mean narrative? Who's narrative?
I believe that media slants towards the police in a major way. People have been told or shown that if you say anything at all about the police, you're a police hater or something to that effect. No, but no, you have to call out the reality. There is a lot of brutality going on out there. The stories never match what really happened. I personally go through that a lot in my cases. My video is always what saves me in all of my cases. And they work really, really strongly in trying to cancel our right to be able to record.
So do me a favor, describe Eric Brandt and use his name, like say Eric Brandt is, however you want to describe.
Sure.
Describe someone who doesn't know Eric Brandt or has seen his videos and said, this guy's fucking crazy.
Eric Brandt would be the guy that, how can I say, when he came into my life, Eric Brandt came into my life when Aurora had done an injustice against me. I was just simply recording inside the courthouse. They have a very beautiful building inside the city of Aurora. I wanted to show people the amount of money that went into that building. It's full of marble and granite and, all this beautiful stuff, right? Brass and just simply recording. I wasn't asking anyone any questions. I wasn't trying to get into anybody's face. It was just me and the camera. I walked around, some lady looked at me and said, what are you doing? I was like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but really, really insignificant. And in the end, I get arrested because she made up a big old story. So she makes up a big old story and has me arrested that I chased her around the building and all kinds of things, and that I called her all kinds of expletives, that I cornered her into her office, and that I threatened with suing her, that I had threatened her with suing her and all these things, and it wasn't true. And she said all of this, wrote a big report, I got arrested and everything, and then somebody must have said, hey, this guy actually put that video up on YouTube, and it really doesn't look anything at all like what you said on the paper. And then Aurora knew that they had a problem. And about a couple days later, I got stream sniped by some gentleman. And
what does that mean?
Stream sniped is that when you're doing a live stream, somebody knows the area, and they pretty much pinpoint you where you're at, and then they go, well, he's right over there on the corner of such and such, right? He's over there by the 7-Eleven, so they did that to me, and the guy, introduced himself, and then he was like some kind of a freedom guy too, or whatever, and then he said, there's a friend of mine coming in, his name's Eric Brandt, and he's kind of like a guy that stands up against injustice, and I'm thinking, I'm picturing this man in a suit, tie, some kind of briefcase guy, Wow, was I shocked, right? I still have that video. In comes this guy talking real loud, recording. And the whole thing about me was I wasn't allowed to record. As soon as I walked into the building, they saw me. They were like, hey, you can't record. Let me not catch you with the video. So I was like, I was intimidated, And in comes this guy, and he had a friend with him, a slender guy, Thomas Stocks, and he's recording. And they're like, you got to stop recording. He's like, oh, really? I don't think so. And he goes, are you recording right now? He goes, hold on a second. And he turns on the camera light and he says, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I was recording. So, and I was like, wow. And then they were going, but Mr. Brandt, you can't record in here. And he was like, okay, so make me stop recording. And then he just grabbed me and said, what are you trying to do? I said, I'm trying to get paperwork, and everybody around here is just like treating me, like I have leprosy. And then he was like, oh, really? He goes, here, let me change that for you. I said, so I don't have any money. He goes, you don't need any money. The only thing you're going to need to give me is a copy of everything that I get you. Right? And he pulled out his own money, and he asked for every record that I could possibly think of or ever need that I didn't even know existed. And I just noticed that every office that we went to, they called out the manager of that office. Right? Hi, I'm Ann. I'm the whatever manager, right? Fill in the blank. And I was just looking at this guy, and then he had no shoes on, jeans kind of shredded on the bottom, and then he had this shirt which he had obviously done himself, and had a kangaroo on it, wearing a judge's garment with a hammer or the gavel, and it said F this court, KORT, and I just didn't know who he was. And then we went outside, and he grabbed a sign that had like 10 signs on it that you can flap over. And you can pick a sign, right? Whatever the moment was. I was just my jaw was just like wide open. And he's walking around this whole building, and then he starts doing his chant. I'm trying to retreat behind a tree, right? I'm saying this guy, at first I thought he was an internet crazy who found me, right? And I was like, this guy he's going to ruin my life. But then after I saw him do everything that he did, I was like, can I go to whatever your next event is? I would love to be there. Right? He goes, I promise that if I ever need you, I'll call you. He called me, all right. He called me 2 days later, and my life has never been the same ever since. Right? It's been a roller coaster ever since, and hasn't stopped. Well, it did now.
What is it that you liked about what he was doing? What is it that impressed you that day that you saw?
Well, I guess it's the same reaction that everyone has. And little did I know it later on, and knowing him, I learned that this was pretty much a tactic for him, right? Like a professional hunter will put out some fake ducks, or a fake deer, right? And he always used to say some comment about, don't let the disheveled homeless look fool you, right? And that was just it, right? When my visual was not computing with what was coming out of his mouth, right? He was obviously a very intelligent guy, right? I mean, his vocabulary was just like, wow, right? This guy's like a walking thesaurus. And then, and he's just like handling these people, kind of like politely and then in Eric's way, right? But he knew exactly what he was talking about. He knew exactly what he was going to get. He knew all of it. And he was there for me, and I didn't know him from Adam. And he was just disturbed that they had done that to me.
So you just took up your case kind of without ever asking?
That was the first time, actually, ever, when I got arrested, that was the first time that I had ever turned on my live stream. I had never, ever live streamed before. But I knew that when I went back, I said, I'm going to go back into that building, right? You can't trespass me from that building. I'm in there to get discovery for my case. How can you trespass me from that building? You're keeping me from being able to fight my own case. But I knew that if I went back in the building with my heart condition, I knew that if I got tased, I'd probably die. So I wanted to have a documentation of that, right? So I was like, well, that live thing, so I looked for it and I got on, and little did I know how many, I had no idea that people watched my stuff. And I only normally recorded police when I saw an interaction happening. There was a pullover, there was a homeless guy being dealt with by the police. I never went and looked for them. I never cop watched before that, right? I didn't go to, if I saw something, I thought I'd be the third person recording, and if something happened, I would give it to them or their insurance company or their attorney or whatever. And after him, it became different. after meeting Eric, it was different. You know, there was a lot more cause and purpose. You know,
What was the purpose?
it was just like the first thing that he ever called me for was a ride. Hey, my ride left me, and would you be so kind as to give me a ride? I'll fill your tank, right? I had a big van, you know, I live in my van, so, you know, I said, that's a big offer. I have a 36-gallon tank. He was like, that's fine. You know, I was like, okay. He goes, it might be all day. It's going to take a while. I was like, okay. I was excited to know what it was he was going to do. Wow. I'd never experienced something like that before, right? His sign, you know, the whole deal, right? And then we were there because there was a police officer, which he's known for. There's a very viral video of Eric and a friend of his who get chased down by a guy and he gets tased, right? They leave a taser in there or whatever, right? And it was Condiati Wade was there, I think, through the case. And the guy won like $167,000. Well, that same police officer later on killed a Green Beret. He was having a little bit of an episode. He was the one that called the police. He was seeing boogeymen outside. He was calling for backup, thinking that his boys were going to come to help him, right? Thinking that the police was going to be on his side, being that he was a very decorated hero. And instead they clubbed him and tased him to death. And Eric was there championing that cause, and I had just never seen anybody that was so dedicated to justice. A person that his entire life was dedicated to that. Every moment of his life, from the moment he wakes up until he goes to sleep, that's all he does is something that has to do with that. You know.
What was it like being with him with all this stuff? What was it?
At first, it was scary, kind of. You know, when you were like going down we were in Elbert County, which was. I mean, it was like being in that little town, right? You know, like you would watch in a movie, you know, and the people are like, get out of our town, you know, and then he's putting his sign out. Hey, don't go over 25 miles an hour. I can't hold it past 25 miles an hour, right? And I'm going, oh my God, put that thing inside the car, right? And then whatever he had for the day, you know, it was either fuck bad cops or he had one that was really cool. That had a turtle with a big old finger. And that one was for children, you know, because it was like the child-friendly sign. That's what he called it, right? So it looked like a children's cover on the book, you know. It was like it was hilarious with the turtle just flipping a big old bird, and he would say something like, he goes, "This is a child-friendly version. The children love it, but the parents not so much." You know, and then I started noticing that it was a very serious and deep investigation that he was doing. That he was just not trying to be an annoyance or, you know, some kind of idiot, right? No, he was actually pinpointing a very serious issue and a very serious cause, and he knew exactly how to do it. So when he appeared and the things that he asked for, he was so precise and intelligent in his askings that all of a sudden you knew that they were shook, right? It was different, right? The response whenever we got there was different. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't blink without being charged with the crime. And we were charged with an endless amount of crimes in that county. And they would stack them. You know, we each got 8 charges apiece.
For what?
For everything, terroristic threats, disturbing the peace, obstruction, trespassing, whatever they could think of that they can stack. Because if you got 8 or 9 charges, I think 8 is the maximum. They're gonna land 1.
What county was this?
Elbert County, and they changed. We're still suing them.
So, like, what is the goal? Like, because some people would say, like, Eric's just causing trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You said you had a specific goal. What is the goal with Eric?
To find the truth, to expose the truth, what's really going on, right? Why was this man killed? Why won't you release the body cam? Why won't you release the information that's pertinent to that case? They would give us stories. But then we would say, well, you can give it to us because you've already given a section to the media, right? And then they would want to deny that. And it was just like horrible, horrible. And then Eric is fearless in the sense that when we would show up to some place, he didn't surprise them. He let them know a few days prior that he was coming. He'd call people up and tell them, hey, I'm going to be there on Friday around this time. You know, be aware. I'm going to let everybody know that you guys killed a Green Beret, right? And you're hiding the police officers. So you're hiding murderers. You know, and they didn't want to hear those words, right? They charged us with trespassing for trying to go to the coroner's office to get the coroner's report, which we had already called and told them that we were on the way to get it. And they told us it was $25. When we got there, we didn't get it. They didn't give it to us. And in fact, they pressed charges on us and tried to charge us with trespassing because the town is so small that the coroner's home was actually a private home and the barn. So it's a home/coroner's office.
Let me ask you, is this the case where Garignani was allegedly killed? I think it was Michael Marshall in jail?
No, that was in Denver. That was Garignani. This was a man named Christopher Matthew Poor, P-O-E-R. He was a decorated Green Beret Army hero, super soldier, the super ops guy, you know, the guy that they make movies about, right? He came back. He was, they were switching his, one of those special dogs that they give them, you know, a service dog, right? For his PTSD and all that. And so he was at the service dog's trainer's, house or whatever, working with the trainer, working with the dog and the trainer together. I guess at that time he had run out of his meds or something, you know, and he was like, well, I'm fine with it, you know. He had a lot of war scars. He started, I guess, seeing boogeymen, you know, things like that, right? And this is a beautiful country area, so big fields across the street, right? And come here, I know you can see it, right? And then he went out there and he just started getting tactical, right? Like he just started rolling around, you know, trying to be, you know, to get out there and you know, see who it was. And then he called the police. I was like, I need help, right? We might have a couple guys here in the dark, you know. And then they had said, look, he might be having an episode. There was another phone call. And but they didn't come with any objective thinking or any kind of, you know, they came ready. This guy has a gun, that's all they cared about. And literally the video, you can understand why they didn't want to release the video, because you see where they just run up and club him to death. And then they just tase him over and over again. You can hear the man die on the video. You can hear his last grunt.
What happened to the cops?
They got a promotion and a raise. He went from Deputy Dickey to Master Deputy Dickey. And then after that, I think he became a woodworker, they said. You know, he wasn't vetted by Elbert County Sheriff's Office from where he had come. And from where he had come, he had actually almost beat to death a man that was having a diabetic issue. He said he was drunk, but literally when you watch the video, the body cam, I mean, he just goes right to the door, opens the door, starts tasing him, pulls him off, starts beating on him, you know, so it was like horrific, right? They tased the man I don't know how many times. They shattered his shoulder, destroyed his shoulder, did all kinds of... So if they would have just called and asked, he would have known that, this guy's a danger. The guy that the police department that had him prior to Elbert County would have told. They said that they would have told the Elbert County Sheriff's Office that this guy is like on his way to killing somebody. Right.
Let me ask you a question. Eric's sentence, how did that affect you? Hard,
very unfair. I believe he was put away because he was just so effective. And yeah, he was a pain in their ass. He was a pain in their ass.
When people watch his videos and say, man, he's a real jerk, he's an asshole, what would you say to them?
You gotta meet him. You have to meet him. His being an ass is actually I guess would be a tactic, right? Because it brings the ugly ones out very easily. You'll see exactly who the abusive ones are. Those will be the first ones who want to lay hands on them, right? Or come up with the first unlawful order. And I learned that about him, right? And also a lot of the things, the clothes that he wears, the color, so that everybody can see him. The reason why he yells is so that people can see, be aware of what's going on, right? They turn around, they look, they want to grab their phone. Hey, what's going on over there? It all has a reason. It all has a reason. He exposes judges, right? Judges that have never filed their oaths of office. You know, these same judges violated his rights left and right. You can't sue them. Right? I've watched judges lock him up in a closet. I've watched judges tape his mouth with duct tape. Right? I've watched judges mandate that if he did not prove how much he made in his veteran's disability, they would not give him a public defender. That is absolutely illegal. Right? On the record, right? This is on the record, recorded. They don't care. He tried to sue them. Eric actually tried to sue them and actually wrote the lawsuit. As soon as he got up there, they're like, nah, you can't touch a judge. But a judge can do whatever he wants to you. Whatever.
Do you think that's a bad sort of imbalance of power?
Yes, I think it's a little psychopathic. Someone gets up there and they feel that they have this immense power. They're just simply because they didn't like what you said or some victimless crime, they can just put you away as long as they, for years over words,
Now, someone might say, man, why are you getting arrested? You're having all this trouble. Why? Why would you want to go through all that?
I guess when this idea really cemented in was when I was watching the protests in China. When I was watching the protests in China, they showed a protester and that protester said, I know that we absolutely do not have any hope. There is absolutely no way that we'll ever win. But if we don't do it, who's going to stand up? And it's nothing heroic. It's just that sometimes you just get angry enough to make it a reason, right? Just like Eric, I'm in a similar position financially.
What?
I'm sick. I can't work right? I'm unemployed. I'm indigent. I need it for my medicines and my medical care. So if I get a public defender, it's given to me because I'm indigent. If I was a regular person with a family and children and a home and a car payment and so on and so forth, you can't do this because they would ruin your life. They would, you'd end up losing your home, your family, your career, everything, everything. So I think that, I guess sometimes being the outcast might be a benefit, right? And then I guess in this case it slightly is. Just enough to be able to stand for yourself and perhaps even make a change legally.
So, because of the situation you're in, it makes it possible for you to do this and makes you want to do it in a way.
It makes me want to do it, because we all want a purpose. What is a man without a purpose or a cause or something that drives you further than, fear and, whatever, repercussions, discomfort, things like that. I saw so much of that in Eric, and I used to be very judgmental. His ways, he's not judgmental, right? So he taught me how to understand people who are hard to understand, to kind of like the unlikable and, things like that.
We could just embrace anybody?
I don't know about anybody. I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty big.
He said he wasn't judgmental.
Yes.
Say Eric's name so we know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, but you say I'm just saying he wasn't just going to say Eric was.
Right.
So
Eric was has always been a guy that people always say, right, that to be loving, or people like to get the credit, or to there's a name for that, but to hey, look how wonderful of a person that I am for doing this, that, or the other, right? Eric doesn't do it for that, right? I watched him get his military paycheck and just start handing out his money, right? To the little old lady, to the guy, he was like a Jesus type of guy, right? He didn't say he loved the lepers. He went over and hugged them, right? He went over there and sat next to them, right? And he shared a drink with them, right? So he was actually involved with them. He really cared, right? If he didn't really have to know you, right? If he saw that your situation was unjust and he was there and he was able to get involved, you can pretty much bet he was getting involved, right? Which is actually was his downfall. He thinks he's Batman. He thinks he's Spider-Man.